Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to Looking Ahead, the series where I break down the meta, what's happening over Japan, and how will it impact Taiwan. City Leagues are back. They have finally returned to Japan Metascape, but how exactly has that really impacted the format? Have we seen a little bit of a shift about what are the top placing decks? The answer is yes. Raging Bolt is dominating the scene right now and outplacing the likes of Palkia, Roaring Moon, even the likes of Charizard and Dragapult. How does this happen? So in today's video, we're going to break down the results of the first weekend of the City League's return to Japan's metagame and how it's really impact going forward, looking at the Champions League next weekend, as well as also Dortmund Regionals in just a few weeks' time for us as we get Stellar Crown release on Friday. So how will this really shape some of your testing going into this new set? Plus, also the brand new rest of the cards got released from Paris Dragona. Is the set kind of a little bit of a dud, or do we get some hidden gems revealed? I generally think there is one card which I am really excited about from Paris Dragona, which we'll get in our Sparking Surges set in the end of the year in November time. I just want to say thank you so much for supporting my channel this past week. It's truly blown me out of the water by how positive you guys have been, and I'm really glad you enjoy looking ahead. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. So let's first of all jump into the brand new cards that got revealed, and we're going to start by looking at Cyclizar EX. Now, I quite like this one. It is a colourless Pokemon, so instantly I'm thinking Bufalon for their additional sort of buff with the HP. So it's also Glass Trumpet, so you can chuck some energies on this one, which is pretty powerful. With Crispin, you can ET Energy Accelerate for an attack on your first turn if you go second. And the second attack is really strong, 180 damage, and draw until you have 5 cards in hand. Draw 5 cards. This is really powerful. If you think about the likes of Instant Charge or Rotom, how strong it is, end your turn destroying 3 cards. Imagine basically 2-shotting the entire sort of format and ending with 5 additional cards. Yes, you are asking to buy Iono and Judge, but it is so powerful end your turn with additional cards. If they don't Iono you or if they don't judge you, you'll have 5 extra cards go with it. Even 6 if you include the card which you draw for turn. So I think this is really powerful. Yes, you can team up with the likes of Penny and start looping it around. Even Churro with Super Rod, so you can use Glass Trumpet and Crispin again. So there are ways around how Cyclizar can kind of like carry on to be this big woolly effect. The only downside is you can't like really easily Energy Accelerate to it after you've kind of utilized all your cards. Palkia is the latest Dragon card, and it's fine. Overall, I always like covering Dragon cards because it's always really unique, its energy requirements. 40 times power basic energy attached for its Pokemon. I can see the likes of Chien-Pao with a ton of water energy with your grass energy for attachment for turn. But honestly, Chien-Pao and other sort of basic sort of attackings are much stronger. With a brand new supporter type, Dragonia, and I think I pronounced that terribly, but it's okay. Shuffle your hand into your deck, flip a coin. If heads, draw 8. If tails, draw 3. This is similar to like Professor Birch's observations. I could see this in the likes of Epic Splash. Potentially could see some play in the likes of some GLC or some off-meta archetype, but as of right now, it is not too good. We've also got a brand new Berry card as well, which is really good. It reduces the attacks done by your opponent's water-type Pokemon. Similar to flags, one produces Psychic and Fire types. If we see Palkia and Chien-Pao kind of get to more dominant numbers, I can see this playing some more of a controlling style archetypes, but as of right now, I don't really see too much. Overall, I think Paris Dragona, we've seen half of the Sparking Surges set, and the only really good cards right now I've seen is the Ceruledge, which is a battle sort of deck which we get as well from this set. It's kind of an okay set, but hopefully with the Champions League happening next weekend, we get to reveal some brand new cards, which I'm really excited about. So let's look at how the meta shift is actually looking at. As you know, I cover quite a lot about the City League meta share, so it's also looking at what are the best placing 6 archetypes. And right now, this top 16 breakdown is really helpful. We can see that Raging Evolve is 18, nearly 20%, 19.8% of the all of the top 16 results. Now, I think this is an incredibly positive result. We started talking last week about how strong Raging Evolve really has become. It is slowly creeping up the ranks of that S tier in the Japan metagame, and I definitely could see this be the case. We saw it do really well in Japan Nationals, where it was one of the most dominating archetypes in the top 8, as well as also in the day as well. It is very fast and very aggressive, and all the Beat Stick 2 prize EXs, this is much stronger than the likes of Roaring Moon, as it requires lots of energy acceleration, has a huge inbuilt draw, where like the Roaring Moon doesn't really have that. It also gained some really good cards like some Noctowl, like some Aerial Zero Underpath, and Briar as well, to get a big easy one-hit KOs on Charizard, take additional prizes. We also have a larger bench size than Noctowl to get any single one of your cards, which I think is a really good caveat. One of the downsides is that I was really surprised that Charizard and Dragapult didn't do as well. Granted, their numbers are very close in numbers, but I think like Charizard is incredibly powerful. It's kind of like eyeing the likes of Fortune are really good to inclusions, but it's also like Briar. I know I've been testing a lot with my friend Justin, who is a good friend of the channel, and he's been really enjoying testing with Thornton. I haven't tested too much about this one, but I'm definitely going to talk about a little bit later about why I think Thornton is a really good inclusion to Charizard EX. Dragapult obviously gained a ton of consistency to attack with it very easily on. Like so Crispin likes the Sparkling. Crystal has also obviously gained Right as well to take additional more prize card. But I generally think that Dragapult is in a good sort of position. It's finally had its time to shine. It's always very, very popular in Japan, and they're finally shifting away from the naughty mode and finally accepting that Pidgeot is the best way to play Dragapult. So I definitely am really excited about how this is really going to develop going into the Champions League next weekend. Gardevoir, I am not shocked at all by being 7.1. The only downside is I generally am shocked it's not as higher. It always has a really good Raging Bolt matchup. Not only does he have Klefki and like Flustermane to shut down most of the ability lock, but also you can have a single prize board saying nearly the entirety. Likes of Churro, likes of collapse day, and you can constantly be bumping your Gardevoir AX. So Raging Bolt has to basically go 1-1, like 1-1-1 instead of 2-2-2, which obviously is a much more favorable position. I could definitely see Gardevoir numbers increase. It's even having the likes of the Moonlit Hill Stadium for additional healing factor, as well as also getting Engine and Discapile being the most stadium card of choice. Granted, it could potentially be an additional stadium card you really need to have, like some Artisan as well. Try to stop the likes of areas that are under depth and likes of Trapagos, even likes of Raging Bolt and Palkia, kind of like good sort of users of this one. So I generally think that might be a little bit of reason why, but also I think it's really good for additional healing factor as well. So you can actually attach energy to Sucking Embrace, whereas the likes of Kieran plays or even Dragapult by spraying damage counters around there, you might effectively not actually get any healing. Roaring Moon actually being 5.5%, I'm a little bit shocked as well. Obviously, it did very, very well for Japanese players in the World Championships, but having 5.5% didn't really gain any new sort of additional cards. Obviously, Petrarund in the Trial of Fable with Fetentipity, but that was only really it. Hasn't really gained any brand new cards since then. So again, not too shocked. The huge shock is Regidrago having the same number as Lugia, and it went from a 25% meta share all the way down to 5.2. This is a huge downgrade. Granted, they didn't really gain too much, and Rise of Raging Bolt had a much, much better matchup into this one. It is very fast, very aggressive. Regidrago, as I always say, it attacks first. You can attack first 50% of the time. It's so difficult to constantly streamline the attacks. And again, if you want to master it a bit more, check out my video for my mastering video in the link in the description below. I think Regidrago is a fine deck overall, but again, didn't really gain too many things. Palkia being 3.6, sorry, it's a little bit lower than I really thought it would do, and didn't really get as much higher placements for the City Leagues. Obviously, it's one of these big sort of brand new archetypes. It's very fast, very aggressive. It's one of the best abusers of Noctowl and areas you're under death. It can have a huge amount of HP, and it's the return of Palkia, but it also gets one hit KO'd by the likes of Iron Thorns, which can be very, very scary, and I generally think it could be not as many energy reliant. I'm a huge fan. I love Palkia from my testing. I think it's really strong. I like Zoroark as well. But as we've noticed here, is like if you're not a very fast, aggressive single two prize archetype, or if you're an evolving deck, have a ton of HP, it's very difficult for other decks to really keep up. Snorlax, they always love control, and Snorlax is the best way to play this one. And Ceruledge is a brand new archetype which got released a few weeks ago, and you can easily build this one straight by buying the battle sort of decks, which is doing really well. I think this is a really good insight about what the top 16 is looking like, especially going into the Champions League or even our brand new format, which is out on Friday. So what exactly and how well did they place? If we look, I always do this every week. I look at the top 6 archetypes and look at the numbers of how many they won, came second, top 4, and top 8. I find this to be a very, very helpful insight to know, oh, Raging Bolt was the best archetype, but how well did it actually do? Was it just very top heavy with its wins, or did it do very, very well in the rest of the meta game? We can see here that Raging Bolt definitely was a clear winner by far, but Charizard and Dragapult are much, much closer in these numbers than I initially thought of. Gardevoir, Raging Bolt, and Roaring Moon and Regidrago all having 3 wins, but all of them vastly different. Gardevoir having much more placement like the Regidrago, which didn't even get any second places. Make sure that Regidrago was constantly always getting the win, or if we see like the Regibolt, a ton of them in that one, having a really, really poor matchup going into this one. I think this is very helpful, and desperately as the weeks go on, I'm going to be constantly moving this around. How much has the meta evolved? Will Raging Bolt always sit at the top? And I think this is a really good indicator. Look at this level in Japan. What are in fact the top archetypes? Now, looking into the tier brackets, looking at all the percentage-wise at Poke at Book, and kind of like they split it into their 3 tiers, A, B, and S, B, and A, we can see that S tier and A tier hasn't really changed too much, except Palkia has kind of shifted away. It was on the A tier archetype, but it's kind of like gone down to B tier, which I think is a bit shocking. Ancient Box is kind of doing very well, kind of like going off to our meta game. It's doing incredible in the online scenes. It's winning nearly every single one, and lots of people are thinking about playing it to Baltimore Regionals this weekend. I'm generally still thinking it's a little bit of a fraudulent deck. It's obviously it can be very fast, but like Corridor and people lots of playing stuff like Walking Wake. But I think it's just fine overall. Ceruledge, like I mentioned, it's a 3%. It's a brand new archetype and very, very fast, incredibly aggressive fan. I'm a huge fan of this one. And rounded out, we have Miraidon and Iron Thorns being about 2% each, which again, if it can really have a good match against the Palkia and the rest of the board, Reminder, it's just a little bit slower of that two-prize beat stick archetype, where it once was one of the strongest ones. Now, as we've kind of looked at the sort of metagame, kind of seen exactly what are the top placing archetypes, let's have a look at the list and see how exactly has it really shaped out from looking at the gym challenges all the way to the city leagues and kind of going forward into our sort of metagame as well. If we look at Raging Bolt, the most common build is this style here, not playing the Noctowl, not playing any of the new cards, only really likes of Briar. This one here is very fast, very aggressive, but it doesn't play likes of Prime Catcher, but this one plays Unfair Slam. This I thought was a little bit unusual and a bit unique. Obviously, you love the Prime Catcher because you want to be fast, you want to be aggressive, you want to have the guaranteed gusting effect instead of potentially a flip or your opponent has control of it if you play like some Iron Bundle. But I really like having the Unfair Slam, forcing your opponent to go to the two cards in hand, and you can essentially see even more of like some Ogre and Sensitivity, which I'm a big fan of this one. I think it's very fast, very aggressive, not really changed too much about it. Whereas I'm a huge fan of the Noctowl. I'm a very big believer in the Noctowl. If you've seen any of his streams going around there, or if you've seen some other testing as well, or if you have your own personal one, I think Noctowl is a really good inclusion. And I really think Raging Bolt is out there, is going to be one of the strongest archetypes purely because of a Noctowl. We can see this doesn't play any of the Briar, but also plays Crispin. Crispin, I think, is a huge introduction to the deck. Not only do you kind of get an energy acceleration, but also you can get your grass energy as well to kind of like draw into like sort of Ogre, which I'm a huge fan of. Yet, is this the best way to play Raging Bolt? Potentially. I think Fan Rotom unlocks it so you can guarantee your Noctowl for late turn. Again, forcing your opponent to Iono you. If you're against Dragapult or if you're against Charizard, I always want to have that Arvin, but potentially it's showing that I have Noctowl in my hand. What are you going to do about it? They might have to force them to do an Iono, like impede their own setup because they don't want you to kind of go fast and go aggressive. We can see here they do play likes of Prime Catcher as the best optimal states. A-Spec as well. And also I really like having a Bravery Charm. Bravery Charm makes sure that Raging Bolt has 290 HP, just out of reach of the Garatinas. And pretty much most of the likes of Charizard as well. So one thing I like about having Bravery Charm, it forces the Regidrago players to find their jamming towers. So again, Raging Bolt has answers to a lot of stuff. It's very fast, very aggressive. And even if you're against a single prize archetype, you can use Fan Rotom to do the 70 HP damage if there's a stadium card in play against one of your opponent, which again is not too bad overall. Charizard, I've mentioned before, is a very fast and powerful archetype. I'm a huge fan of, especially since Dusknoir 1 became very popular at the World Championships. One of the cards here which you might notice a little bit unique is Autumn. I've been testing with my friend Justin and we've been kind of like going to and forth, and I've really come to around that Fortune is a really strong archetype. I haven't tested too much about this, so in some of my archetypes and lists, I haven't really mentioned Fortune too much, but Fortune opens up so many opportunities. It removes any of your liabilities. It makes sure you can get your Charizard and Dusknoir out much easier instead of forcing yourself to get Super Rod or even Night Stretcher. Also make sure you can get your Pidgeot as well. I think this is very much, it opens up a ton of opportunities. I also love the Briar as well, because the very scary thing about Charizard is effectively, even if you taken only 2 prize knockout, you can force your opponent to get down to 2. You can then play the Briar afterwards as well to make sure your opponent doesn't you can get additional prize cards that way. You can use Dusknoir as well to kind of get even more cards as well. So it's so many ways to play around it as well. You may notice as well you're going to a 3-1 3-line of Charizard. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Some people even go to a 3-1-2 because there is so much stuff you want to add into Charizard. Briar really unlocks the archetype so much. And I think Fortune really helps as well to remove your liabilities. We want to have more stadium bounce as well. Like if we see the likes of Palkia and the likes of areas around the see a lot more play, which granted we didn't see that much play, so that's probably why you don't need to ride too much of stadium cards, but effectively you could even add even more collapsed stadiums. Dragapult didn't really change too much in the sort of build, but also change a lot in the consistency. Sparkling Crystal as well as also Crispin kind of gets you your energy acceleration from the deck, but also make sure Dragapult can attack for 1 energy. Also like having the team league headquarters because it makes sure the opponent has to have additional energies on their Raging Bolt, on their Roaring Moons. So they have to have 4 or 3 energies attached to it, which I think could be very scary and also helps you a lot in that sort of matchup. Gravity Stone as well makes sure that you can guff something up in the access well, spread loads of damage counts around there, supporting your opponent to find their switching cards instead of using a 1 energy retreat costing, or potentially they might have a double turbo, which I'm a huge fan about this one. Going with a 4-4 line, very heavy on the Arvin and Ionos, potentially is the best way to fall this one. Effectively, you can still go similar route of a Charizard by having the 2 Ionos and 4 Arvins, but I definitely think you have a good counter for this one. 3 counter catches again, you're always going to be behind, so I really like that gusting effect. There is very aggressive, playing 5 gusting cards as well, and of course TMD because you really need that one because you're spraying lots of damage counters around. Hooch as well can make sure you can get that 70 HP 3Ps as well as also Charmander as well, and also Rolls. Speaking of roles, Gardevoir. This one here has changed a little bit. You do a split of the Scarlet and Violet and the Silver Tempest roles as well. But also, another thing you've noticed, we're not playing the likes of Radiant Greninja, but also in that Moonlit Hill Stadium. I'm a big fan of Moonlit Hill Stadium. We talked about it a little bit last week. We saw quite a lot of people playing it at the gym challenges, and we have seen that kind of bleed through in the city leagues. They are still playing the TM Devo and a heavy bravery chunker in that route, but I really like the Moonlit Hill. It stops them from any sort of pesky plays of Dragapults or even Kieran plays as well. So kind of like locking you out from doing any sort of healing factors as well by through likes of Monkey Dory and Cresselia, or even attaching energies from Gardevoir. So I really think that's a really good unlocking factor. Plus also with additional more stadium card in play, so you can make sure you're always going to be having the bump to the Area Zero underpass. Playing 1-2 instead of the likes of Collapse Stadium, I could argue so you want to play a Collapse Stadium in this one, but again, it's all about space as well. Rest of it is just very, very simple. You are always going to be attacking with the Drift Flume, with the Screamtail as a big one-hit carries for the late of game. But you only play one Bravery Charm, you'll move around lots of energy damage counters anyway and take you potentially the Team Devo route as well. What I like about it is you still play the Clefairy, you still play the Fluctumate. If you have these very fast, aggressive, basic rule box EX Pokemon, kind of like limiting them from using their abilities, is also really, really strong. Gardevoir is definitely going to be up there in play, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more play about it in City League, especially going to the Champions League as well. Roman, like I mentioned before, this one here is just a little bit different, much slower, and it's very similar to my expanded build with the likes of Unfair Stamp. One thing you always notice with Roman, you want to have the fast aggressive, you want to have that prime catcher. What's Gustin in this deck is obviously very limited by maybe only playing the prime catcher as well as also an Iron Bundle. So having that Unfair Stamp, make sure that you're really disrupting your opponent after you get this big one-hit KO, or potentially the setup from the opponent's side. Playing 4 Pokemon catchers means that's your big Gustin effect, and kind of hoping to hit this one, especially after playing 4 copies of Pokestop. Another interesting thing is a Poison Bow Mochi, making sure that Roy Moon can actually hit the right numbers. These big one-hit KO potentials with this kind of stadium card actually might push it into exactly the right amount of range it really does require. Whereas the first one, not too much, not too different to how we're seeing this one. Still 2 copies of the baby one, so you can get potentially a 2-shotter or potentially as KO, have a single prize trade-off at times. Definitely a interesting way how Roaring Moon is played, but if you are going to be playing a big basic deck, definitely play the likes of Roaring Moon. Not Roaring Moon, Raging Bolt, as we know, but we'll get a 2-month Ogre to get a promo card next month, as well as also getting the Raging Bolt sort of tins out as well in a few weeks, or actually out now. So that's another really easy, affordable way to play one of the best decks right now in the format. And let's look at Regidrago, an archetype which hasn't really gained as much, but we see it change quite a bit. Going the likes of Guja as well, kind of accepting defeat in that sort of way, but also they're kind of like you're seeing the Jamming Tower. Like I mentioned before, Raging Bolt becomes very much a scary archetype, and you want to KO it very, very easily with likes of Giratina, and not waste and potentially try and get a Hawlucha play next turn or Dragapult to spread some damage counters. So I'm a huge fan of this one. Whereas this one, not too much to change about, but like I mentioned before, if you want to know a bit more about this archetype, definitely check out my latest mastering video from a few weeks ago. Now let's look at some of the decks which is a little bit outside of this one, but still did pretty well. Still really, again, didn't gain too many things, but I think it could be well placed in the meta game. If we're seeing these very high HP basic Pokemon to kind of go around this one, but not a lot of switching cards because there's not really much space around this one, this is where Stall can really kind of like have into effect. Yes, a Cornerstone Ogre obviously does not stop the likes of Raging Bolt, but also it does with likes of the block class can really slow down these Squawkabillies or the any sort of Pokemon which you don't really want to have in the active spot as well. So that's one of the things I really like as well. Heck, chucking the likes of Gravity Stone as well can make it very, very disruptive for any of your opponent to bring anything out. I really like the Zero-6, I like the Team Nose Chill. There's not too much really to talk about with Stall, but I think it's definitely a well placed in the metagame. If we are kind of seeing right now, we're seeing not a lot of switching cards being played. Stall is definitely going to be a much more of a stronger threat, especially with the likes of the Pokeflu, stopping down from any of them using their key sort of sport Pokemon in their early turns. Lugia as well did pretty okay overall, and we've seen that they can play the likes of the Wellspring Master Ogre opponents who have some Terra ones, but they're not even playing likes of Area Zero Under Depth or even Knocked Out to kind of like help this consistency. On the other hand, we are seeing the likes of Klefki as well having to slow down from a certain archetype. Obviously, it's really good because it stops the likes of the Turbo Iron Hand, so you can actually utilize Lugia's ability. We have seen like Klefki's being used, but also we've seen Fluttermane was used quite a lot in the early sort of game, but it seems to now change back to the likes of Klefki. Is that going to be the best way of going forward one? I was like having the basic energies as well, so you're not relying on the Luminous energy if you want to play this one, or Legacy energy as well. Again, Lugia, I would say, is very much not borderline or fraudulent, but I definitely would say even now they still have that brand new sort of A-spec which can discard 5 cards, and they're not playing this one because they're worried that Lugia doesn't really want to rely on having that as one, and it can still work functionally overall. Chien-Pao actually did get a win, and for me personally, I'm very, very happy. As you know on this channel, we are huge Chien-Pao believers, and As you know from the channel, I love this deck. It's a deck which has actually done so much to me, so much for the channel, and it means a lot to me. And seeing this new updated one, it's definitely giving me mixed feelings in a way. We saw the Ice Cube as the Terra Pokemon of choice, which again is pretty interesting. You go, oh, so you can play Fan Rotoms, you can play Noctowns, you can play Aries or Underpuff. No, it's still exactly the same as normal. I'm definitely toying around right now with a Chien-Pao list, which plays the likes of Aries and Noctowl and stuff like that. So hopefully I'm going to release that deck profile in the end of the week. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But the rest of this one, not too different from Chien-Pao. Unfair Slam is a Prime Catcher without any sort of gusting effect outside of the likes of 2 copies Counter Catcher and Boss's Orders. I'm a little bit sketchy about this one. I definitely much prefer having the Prime Catcher as an ace-spec, so guaranteed gusting effect, because obviously I have Pokestop as well. It's obviously good against likes of Raging Bolt and Roy Moon. If they are going to get these big one-hit KOs, they're going to potentially take a single prizer, and then forcing them to go down to 3 whilst also responding with a KO could definitely be a much stronger sort of play. So definitely something to be considered about. Palkia, on the other hand, had a huge sort of change, and the most common build which worked up at the top table, so top results, was Palkia with Dusknoir and 0 copies of any of the Area Zeros or Underdepth, Noctowl, Trapagos, or Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, which I am absolutely shocked. Me personally, I think Palkia is in a really good situation. I've been toying around with it, which I'm definitely going to be talking about in a few days' time with my top competitive archetypes, playing around with the likes of Iron Valiant. I think Iron Valiant is a really good inclusion for Palkia. It boosts up that damage counter, makes sure it can hit over the 300 damage against the Charizards and the Dragapults. But playing that Dusknoir, yes, you do force your opponent to take additional prize card, but you unlock so many things. You unlock the Blood Immunus Luna. You unlock the big one-hit KOs potential that Palkia really has to offer. Yes, obviously you want to have that damage output and things like that. But I generally think this is an interesting build. I'm really excited. I definitely might try this build out. I think having the chorus as your draw factor makes sure that you don't really want to get in any of your get rid of any of your key cards. You always want to draw into them. But effectively, if you get all your Dusknoirs in there, you don't really want that as well. But you can attack with Cramorant with Dusknoir as well to do additional damage, get one-hit KOs that way. It's definitely one route around this one. Definitely intrigued about where this can kind of go for Palkia. I would like to see if it carries on the City Leagues, so it also bleed into our metagame as well, or effectively into the Champions League as well next weekend. Definitely something food for thought. And let's look at Ceruledge as well. This is a unique sort of approach to Ceruledge. Not playing the brand new ace-spec to discard lots of cards. This plays a ton of discarding effects with the likes of Pokestop, Research, Carmine, Ultra Ball, and the likes of the Squawkabilly, Serendipity for draw, Greninja, Earthen Vessel, so many things about this one. I really love the Spiritomb, slowing down your opponent's Luminions and the Rotoms as well, because if we see Charizard kind of go up top table, you'll have a good matchup against one. So Spiritomb definitely makes a lot of sense. Definitely think Ceruledge has got lots of contention. The only thing which is I'm not talking about too much, we're not going to see this really till a November set, but I think this is definitely up there as a very powerful deck. I really like having the Gift Energy, the Mist Energy, the Jet Energy, the Legacy Energy to slow down, to make basically a one prize at one stage. It's going to be a very fun deck, and I'm really excited about where this is really kind of go forward. Now, just looking ahead, is Raging Bolt the next BDIF kind of close enough? I really think Raging Bolt has huge contention to be one of the strongest archetypes we've seen in quite a long time. It is very fast, very aggressive, it has one of the best draw factors in the game, and can utilize the likes of Noctowl as well if you really require. Can Palkia keep up with this metagame? I was a huge Palkia believer, but after looking at this sort of metagame, granted it's only the first weekend, we've only had 2 days right now, we've got to see the metagame kind of evolve and digest as we kind of go around. Palkia definitely has some sort of legs to kind of stand on, but if we see the likes of Raging Bolt kind of like be the most dominant presence, and if Charizard and Dragapult are going to be up as one of the strongest decks, Palkia can definitely have a tough time unless you're playing ways to kind of like sort of cheat the system in a way, like having that Dusknoir, having Iron Valiant trying to get over the head. And is it Dragapult's time to shine? I think it finally is. We've seen obviously Japan love Dragapult. We've seen it dominate the metagame, but then not really having its big sort of wins. But we did see it do pretty well. It's finally going to Pidgeot build, so they're learning in that sort of way. It finally has the best the Energy Acceleration, with the Sparkling Crystal, with the Crispins. You have multiple ways to kind of like get it out and play instead of relying on the Mala or Armorage Energy switches or like so they up in Neo Energy. So it could actually be Dragapult's finally it's time to shine. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this latest episode of Looking Ahead. If you have, please make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below, what deck do you actually think is really surprising by doing so well at the City Leagues? Are you excited that they're back, and how do you think it's really going to impact our metagame when the set is released on Friday? I'll go back in a few days' time with looking at the top rogue archetypes from Stellar Crowns, but also top competitive archetypes, which will be released on release day on Friday. Make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.